Are some people like tired of influencers? When an ad person sees a really good ad out there in the world, we think, wow, what a miracle. I don't know that I believe in a branding flop. I don't know. I mean, look.
Or like Bud Light.
I mean, if you really want to say a brand flop, just Jaguar.
Have you seen Benson Boone? Everything around him right now? That he went through this whole phase of dressing up, and everyone was basically saying, you're pretending to be Freddie Mercury. For the person listening right now, they are probably not in the marketing space. They're probably interested in marketing, interested in advertising. Should they trust their intuition? Or is this something that you possess because you're a creator? Today we have Carlos Wigle, also known to the people that don't know his name as Carlos Wigle, which is a lot more fun. You are the Chief Creative Officer at Morgan & Morgan, which is massive. And a lot of people have probably seen the Size Matters campaigns, which is a very bold campaign, especially for a law firm, or the New York Lottery campaign, which I forgot exactly when it was, but just walking to work every day, I think I would see not video ads, but I would see their still ads just on billboards. So it's pretty wild to see someone who is involved in that process. The first thing I want to know is, being on the outside of the whole ad industry, what do you think the biggest misconceptions are that I have about what goes into making ads and everything that's happening there?
Yeah, I think one of the things to think about is when an ad person sees a really good ad out there in the world, we think, wow, what a miracle. Like, what gauntlet this little idea had to get through to get approved and executed in this fashion. It's really a miracle. So when you see a good ad, it's like, wow, good creative team, good account people, great client, great, whether it be photographer, director, casting, the craft involved of getting something from a fun line or an idea in a pad all the way to a polished, executed. It's so many millions of delightful micro decisions that have to get you there. So when you see something out there that's like wonderful, you're like, wow, that's an accomplishment in its own right. And I think that for those that don't know, we're talking months, long nights, tons of decks. We call them decks, but presentations, Google Slides, all, no matter where you're doing them. There's so many, people use Adobe InDesign, whatever your presentations, long, drawn out presentations, meetings, feedback loops, they call it. Like, they want to change, and then this will change, and then a domino will hit, and then there's all these other changes. So the fact that something fresh and fun can make it, I think is rare. And that's why we celebrate, I think advertising has more award shows than any other industry. We love patting ourselves on the back. I think for two reasons. I think creative types are always looking for like oh, did I do good? Oh, good. Thank you. Just some creative acknowledgement goes a long way for us. But also because it is such a rarity to get something great done. And that's why you do have standout brands making that work. The Nikes, the Squarespaces, those brands that kind of get consumer behavior and their taste will want work in that, in that realm, versus people that are, I'm sure there's businesses where the ownership and the management, they're focusing on the bottom line rather than the connection. And I think that's where ads tend to slip, when it's like, we need it to do X, Y, and Z. We need it to sell. We need it to launch this product. We need it to this, versus we need everyone to love this thing.
And I wanted to say, even as a non-advertiser, seeing your work, just going through, it's your name, right? It's carloswigle.com.
carloswigle.squarespace.com.
Yeah. You have, I don't know what it is, like 15 different ad spots that you did, different ad campaigns, and they all have a storyline. They all feel like a human made it. They all look amazing. They sound amazing. The music is perfect.
Oh, thanks, man.
They feel so cinematic. And you're just like, I see ads all the time. I'm in New York City walking through Times Square and I'm like, this ad is so boring. This ad, why does it look that bad? And then I go to this and it's all just perfection. And it's amazing to see. I want to know when I'm walking and I see, I forgot what street it is, probably 34th Street. There's a big Dunkin' ad. That's just a loop of, it's this big Dunkin' cup with like perspiration droplets going down it. How much are they paying for that ad?
Whew, that's a media buyer question. I mean, luckily, us creative types don't have to get too down and dirty in the details of how much an ad costs. What I can tell you about that ad is why it probably works. That appetite appeal, that kind of, you know, evocative, visual that makes you want to thirst for something. I think that's why it definitely works. It makes it kind of like tangible for those that may not be desiring a coffee in that second until they see it, and then that hits.
It's just an iced coffee and it's like 8 p.m. I'm like,
It hits the receptors.
it works.
Yeah, it does. What that can cost on 34th Street in Manhattan on a constant loop, probably a solid sum, I would say.
What about the production side of it?
Yeah, production's time. And production is something that's always been hacked at over the years. It used to be the craft was like up here, and they would hire the craziest photographer to come and shoot this thing. And people were, it was a real production out of it. And now I think that over the years, production costs have ballooned for brands to a point where they feel it's completely unfair. And with the invention of, almost an entire creative studio on your phone, people are realizing that maybe these production costs are bloated and maybe I can get great content from a really amazing maker slash creator that's just as good, that cuts out the 50 middlemen that have eaten off of this big production budget. I mean, ad agencies and production houses have some of the coolest offices on the planet. You go there, it's like, fridges filled with all cool kinds of European beers and snacks of all kinds and video games. And why? Well, it's part of the draw. It's part of why we want to go work with them. It's like, yeah, I want to spend 5 hours of my day at their office kind of talking about my work and trying to make it better. And obviously they employ some of the best creatives. So there is this kind of, within the creative world, there's this desire to work with the cool companies that have the cool people, that have the tastemakers. And so it's kind of all been wrapped together. Like, I have this project and I have a budget, but I really want to work with them for a few reasons. And that used to be kind of how I think marketing and advertising worked. It was like, every idea and every project is really just an opportunity to shine. And well, I can't just let it, I can't just hand this to anybody. When's the next opportunity coming? And this isn't just an opportunity. This is a showcase of me. So let me go pick the best people, the best places. And if it's really fun and cool also, all the better. So let's go with them. And I think that's how these places built these cool offices and skyscrapers all over the place with just the coolest interior design and food and fun. With the big bloated production money, that's how they spent it. And I think over the years, people have decided that, they've gotten smart to the game. What, we're paying for you guys to have a cool office? No, I want to pay for the work and the work only. And now that I can kind of slash the prices and get something just as good, I think that's what they're doing. And I think that's why I don't know if you guys follow much of advertising in general, but the agencies are, they're kind of collapsing into each other, to stay alive. These holding companies that, ran multiple ad agencies are just kind of, merging just to stay afloat. And as brands are getting smart and picking up influencers and content creator agencies and shifting how they spend their money, it's it's already, the landscape is starting to create some seismic shifts, of how things work and how brands communicate. I'll give you a bad example. I was watching School of Hard Knocks.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I saw this interview they did on the red carpet of Mission Impossible with Tom Cruise. And I thought, now why would they do that?
Why would who do that? Mission Impossible?
Yeah. Tom Cruise, this. Oh, a little birdie told me that they reached out to him. And it's interesting because maybe the big trailers and maybe the marketing formula of the bygone era just isn't working. So to try to pivot, these studios are saying, okay, who's crushing it right now? Who has the eyes? And School of Hard Knocks has the eyes right now. Okay, so let's get him to come to the red carpet. So, and that's an example of how the film industry is shifting how they promote a film. Now, if we kind of take that same veil and look at how brands work, I think that we're in a really interesting place in the era of marketing, and brands are figuring it out, and nobody knows what works. And that's fun for me. I mean, to me, that's an exciting time to be alive, because anything has the possibility of going wild. Now, you're going to have to jump quickly across the lily pads to not fall in the water. I think, like, as a creative, anything that's too formulaic feels stale and rigid and old. And I want to believe in a creative world where it's never figured out and there's never a formula and we'll never know, because maybe the thing that I'm holding could be that thing, as long as I look at it from the right vantage point or present it that way.
Yeah. There are three things that I want to unpack from that. Maybe we'll get to all of them. Maybe we won't. One of them is influencer marketing. One of them is brand building, especially today when we have all this AI and it feels like the barrier to just decent quality is gone. And then the first one that I was thinking when you first started was this shift from the giant holding companies to smaller creators and creative consultants. Seeing a lot of creators more in the social media space, I get the sense that they don't see the actual value in the high production. They don't see the difference between, I can take out my camera that I just got from B&H and I can put up, like this studio, for example. To me, it feels like such a high production. The camera quality is great, the lighting is great. So how can an ad take months to make, and why is it worth all this money? And the truth is that I just don't see the quality difference in the top of my mind, but I can feel the difference, obviously, and that's what it's paying for. But I want to break down the actual quality difference. Why is the influencer who feels like, oh, I'm making cinematic content today, I got my extra lens to put on my iPhone and I got a ring light and now it's cinematic. What's the difference between those two and why is it worth the investment? So if we could first go to influencer marketing, because I see a lot of ads that are even also on 34th Street. There's one saying, we're tired of the influencers. I know you're tired of the influencers. So here's our beer without the fluff, something along those lines. And then I see the other people like Logan Paul and Prime or Mr. Beast and Feastables saying, buy our stuff, and it seems to be working. So where do you think consumers stand today with influencer marketing?
You know, the brand messages of we're not influencer brand, okay? Versus we're literally an influencer driven brand. Um, I think that's just a way for brands to differentiate. Sometimes when brands speak, we're not into EV cars, we're into gasoline. Like
Yeah.
what we're not versus what we are. So people can use these things to push off of to better define themselves. Um, I don't think that they speak to the world. Um, are some people like tired of influencers? I'm sure there are. Is there probably an age range of people that are tired of influencers? I'm sure there is. Is there an age range that live and die by the mouth of an influencer? Totally. And obviously, we see through Prime and Feastables that there is a market and like a serious, consumer base for what they're doing because their brands are growing so quickly. Now, to go back to your other question about quality of content capture, I think it's a fascinating question. And I don't think there's an answer because everything is tone. And let's say Louis Vuitton or I don't know, another type of really crazy high end brand started doing some stuff, just handheld iPhone. You know what? I might like that.
And actually, we have a friend that came on the podcast. We made a couple of videos with Confidence Heist. Have you seen the guy who walks up in New York and he says, "What makes you confident?" So he just had a campaign with some fashion brand in Paris, and they have these supermodels being walked up to and asked that question, and they're paying for this campaign.
Sure.
And the videos did great, as far as I know.
Yeah. I think that once again, remember I talked about the stiffness of the formula?
Yeah.
Your brand can't do that. I don't believe in a brand unable to break from uh, the confines of a campaign style. I think that real branding is a narrative, regardless of platform, right? So it's a story. It's a story.
Okay.
Now, how would I tell that story in a handheld iPhone? Now, how would I tell that story in a gorgeous 2-minute cinematic ad film piece? How would I do that if I threw an event? How would I do that if I did a cool art installation? I don't like saying that this works, this doesn't work. Dude, I can make anything work. But what am I doing and how am I doing it? I think is really the key. Those are just avenues for me to tell my story. And I like mixing it up and kicking up some dust and breaking the rules and showing that it's not really about that. And so I applaud anyone who can shift. We're seeing like I said, we're seeing the movie industry shift. We're seeing brands shift. So why should it matter what the quality is? Now, for some things, I think quality can be sometimes confused with a good lens and good lighting. And I don't think that's inherent quality of content. I think quality of content is the concept. That's where the quality needs to live and breathe. Like, because if conceptually this is a good way to execute, that's quality.
Yeah. Especially in social media, we found that a lot. There are people with huge productions and they're just talking about really boring things that no one cares about. And then most of the giant influencers are filming on their iPhones and getting millions of views. And it's all just a concept there.
Concept. Also, I think the elephant in the room that nobody wants to talk about is the layers of approval. When you're dealing with this big, massive company, there's probably 150 people that have to agree that that is what they want to be doing, saying, and spending money on, versus an influencer is like, hey, dude, we're going to spend 150K doing this thing next weekend. Like, all right. Right.
Yeah.
There's less stringency, less risk, you know what I mean? It's a completely different mind, um, it's a completely different mentality there. And if every big brand worked as an influencer, that probably wouldn't work either, and vice versa. Like, I think there needs to be like a fluidity in how we execute, who we speak to, and how. You know, that's my take to it. Now, you could execute the same idea really lo-fi and really well, and it may not make a difference. And it's on the creatives and the people and the teams and the brands to know better. And that's our job too. It's not just about coming up with the idea. It's knowing, like, is this worth it? And we do have some of that in the industry, like, keep the budget in mind. Keep the budget in mind. Well, now it's like, okay, it almost takes on a different definition, keep the budget in mind. Well, maybe I don't need to be spending like that, or maybe it doesn't need to be executed as such. And I think that opens us up for, more abilities to kind of shuck and jive in the creative, in the creative moment. Like, no, let's do this, and let's do that. Versus, like, if this big production is built, you can't change in the moment, because you have to ask permission for those 150 people now that have already approved an idea that, like, oh no, I want to change it. We can't. It's been approved. It's been paid for.
Yeah.
And so that to me is like, I'm afraid of that. I would be afraid of the big budget, tons of layers versus, should we just try it? Let's just try it. Let's take it into the edit. Maybe it'll make the video. Maybe it won't. Who cares? It doesn't cost us anything to cover it. Let's get the coverage. Let's go. There's benefits and pluses and minuses to both sides. And it's feeling that in this era, brand agency structure has literally created like a straitjacket. And I understand that it's like scary for those involved, because it means, possibly losing.
It's cutting off the lifeline. That's your whole budget.
It's budget, it's planning, it's skyscrapers filled with people, it's billions of dollars. But the refusal to shift is part of the problem, in my opinion.
Yeah. And you see a lot of that with some Disney movies, where it's kind of just, they had this concept that they clearly had at the beginning, and it turned into something that a lot of people probably saw wasn't going to be great. And they're kind of just like, we're this far in, we can't stop. And there are probably a lot of creative decisions in there that were also, they just weren't allowed to make, because it was all based on that one concept at the beginning that they just had to stick to. But I want to talk about, a lot of your work is dealing with these bigger budgets, is dealing with already evolved brands. It's dealing with big talent. But if you were starting off something like this, a small business with either hopes of just making a great small business or making some huge brand chain big business, how do you go about it? Because it feels like you have tools in your toolbox that I don't have access to right now. So how can I approach it where I'm not just throwing some color on the wall and calling that my brand?
Yeah, it's a tough question. I think that it's important to break down who, what, you are, and you're like why you're the why you are, and try to develop a little bit of a narrative there. If I was starting over, like, there's something you should know about, like, us creative types, at least me. I'll talk about myself because that's the only person I can really talk about is I want to make things. I want to be in the creative pit all the time. That's where I feel alive. That's where I feel confident and powerful. And that's where I don't second guess my point of view. Like, I know. How do I know? Because I feel it. And my instincts tell me, and I know what's good and I know what's not good. And like looking at an edit, like, it's not there. This part made me feel weird. That part made me, that needs work. I just know, or that's not the right person for the spot. That it just so when you say, if you were building a business, I don't. That's not how I think. I'm not trying to build a business. I'm trying to build a story. I'm trying to tell somebody something, and I want it to hit. So when it comes to, like, if I were trying to build something for me now as a creator, that's the only way I can look at it, right? I would embrace the maker mentality that we have available. Look at you guys. A little beautiful studio, some cameras, some lighting, getting engagement, likes and shares, getting people in to talk to you. You're already on the way of making. But if the question is, like, how do I differentiate myself? How do I grow myself? I think that it takes isolating your why. Because there are other people in this maker mentality these days. So in a way, the lighting, the cameras in the room are not unique. So what are we going to do? What are we going to say to make this seem different?
Is it because sometimes I'm torn between, is the goal to make it seem different, or is that all a waste of time and the goal should be to make it actually different, to live a different life, to be different from everyone else?
So I think isolating the desire to have, like, a point of view, like a POV, like, I'm the blank guy. That's me. It feels real. Once you isolate that, I think naturally you start to gravitate in that direction. So I don't believe when you just say, I just say I'm that, but I'm not really that. Once you've already kind of drawn that line, you've created, like, an invisible path. And now anything that doesn't go in that direction feels fake and false. You ever see the movie Donnie Darko
No.
with Jake Gyllenhaal? I suggest you watch it. It's a really odd one, but there's a moment in there where it's like these weird beams are coming out of people, and they like kind of follow the beam. And it's this whole idea of him thinking, like, is there free choice? Is there not? Are people just following their beams, right? So what am I telling you? I'm telling you that once you identify who you are, even without doing it yet, once you identify who you are, everything that's not that will not feel right.
So first of all, we took a question that was, how do I make a business brand great? And now all we have to do is find your reason for existence, which feels like it made it an even harder question.
Think so? Because let's break down your question. How do I make my business bigger? I mean, if I could answer that for you, I mean, wouldn't that answer could technically be, attached to any brand and it would just work.
Yeah.
But that's not how it works. There's not a single answer to for all business problems. But if there was, I think it would be finding the you. And I think that naturally it naturally kind of gets you on the brand path to success, because it will tell you what you're not, and that will be noted by the viewers, the clients, the customers. And you may not even have to say it. You may just act it. And then they'll be like, oh, they'll recognize the behavior shift, the brand behavior shift. If you're an individual, if you're a brand, they'll notice that you're doing things differently. Um,
Have you seen Benson Boone? All the everything around him right now? That he went through this whole phase of dressing up, and everyone was basically saying, you're pretending to be Freddie Mercury, and you're not Freddie Mercury, and it's disrespectful, and we don't like you, and you're big marketing, go away. And now he came out and he's like, everyone hates me, and he said it enough times as a joke that now everyone's kind of back on his side. He came out with this moonbeam ice cream cookie with crumble, and it's just crushing on social media. And he turned basically a branding flop into this new, now he's toned down Benson Boone.
I don't know that I believe in a branding flop. I don't know. I mean, look.
Well, like Bud Light.
I mean, if you really want to say a brand flop, just Jaguar is really, I think, one of the biggest ones recently. If you don't know it, you should pull it up and add it to this video.
Are there stats now on how it's doing?
Yeah, I mean, they're in emergency surgery for that brand, but the fact that like people can jump on the hate bandwagon means that you have attention. That's a bandwagon. You know, like when I heard that like Jaguars, like it's almost like I'm driving and it's like you see like a kind, not even like a good car accident when you're like, oh, everybody's going slow. You're like, whoa, okay. And like, why is everybody going so slow over here? And then it's your turn and then you go real slow too. But then there's some accidents where you're just like, was that an accident? I don't care about that. You know, that's how I felt about Jaguar. Jaguar is so out of my periphery that Jaguar, who did what? I don't care personally. But that's why that flop to me wasn't even like a Benson Boone flop's like, all right, well, let's hear him out. What does he got to say for himself? Right. And that alone, I'm making time to hear his point. Already means, you know, no such thing as bad publicity. I think that could be like in that we could stamp that situation with that. And then he turns it into a product launch and then into his own brand relaunch. Sure. But I don't consider that a teetering at all.
Would you say you have to be worth hating, or ideally are you not being hated by anyone?
You have to have a POV. I think like, and when you do, people are going to love it and people are going to hate it. I think that you have to have, I mean, you know, there's this idea of safe advertising, you know, like when a brand's like, oh, I don't know, it's a little risky. It's this, it's that. I don't know. Should we say that? Should we not say that? Safe advertising is the most risky because it runs the risk of not being noticed. So rather be size matters than what was that billboard for? Dude, can you imagine? Can you imagine spending hundreds of thousands of dollars in one city and people are like, what was that? I don't remember. What billboard? Versus like size matters. I hate that. Yeah, but you saw it.
And there's some campaigns also. It's reminding me of all those Chick-fil-A ads. Where
eat more chicken.
No one hates those, I don't think.
Yeah.
There's something so unique about it.
Yeah, I don't know. Hate is a strong word. Annoying, dumb, cheesy. Sure.
Yeah, I do hear that.
You know what I mean?
That's the first reaction for a lot of people probably is, that's dumb. What's up with that?
Yeah. But they stuck to their guns. It's cute. I saw recently a Chick-fil-A commercial where people wanted to go to go get hamburgers, but they're like looking outside their window and it's like raining. And their friends are like, hey, you want to meet up? And they're like, but it's raining over here. They're like, no, it's not. It's not raining over here. And they live like a few houses over. And then you realize all the cows are like making fake storms. in front of their house. Like, but the best part was like you see this hoof hit this like the tin top of a garbage can to make like a thunder. Um, but that little moment of the hoof, boom, made the whole spot.
It's
Cheesy, yes. Funny, yeah.
it's crazy. It's crazy to think someone was sitting in an editor's room. It was like, should we put it in? Should we not put it in? And then it
Oh,
made
dude,
it.
the whole spot hinged on the hoof hitting the tin garbage can. To me, like I didn't like it until that moment, and I'm like, all right, you won me. You won me for that little hint, and now I kind of like you.
With all of the branding stuff, it feels like at first it's a lot of throwing spaghetti at the wall. And there's one side that I've heard to building a brand, which is you need to stick to something. Otherwise, you can't build the consistency. But then there's also, if it's not working, when do you stop doing it? So for something like a podcast, we can have a million different tones. We could be putting on suits and be super professional and ask uptight questions, and maybe it'll work. Or a better example that we actually think about more is thumbnails. So do we say, this is our thumbnail style, we stick with that, we want people to recognize it? Or do we say, well, this one isn't working, so I don't care about consistency, it's not working.
Okay, so I'm gonna answer you two ways. So you keep saying like, remember I told you like once you figure out who you are, anything that you do outside of that will not feel good and correct.
Yeah.
Like if you were in a suit right now and I was in a suit right now, would we feel correct about that?
No.
Right.
It'll be funny.
Right. But that's kind of our guiding. Okay, that would feel off for us. So that's like I was talking about. Once you know who you are a little bit or have something, a sense, doing things out because you're right. There's endless ways we could have done this, or you could have done this, or the tone of this. But this is what actually felt good, normal, right. Okay. But now you just said about the thumbnails. Now I want to give you some of your, as an old world marketing guy, I want to give the new world guy some of his own new world medicine. Why not test 25 different thumbnails, bro? And then come back with the data and then repost it. Yeah.
We do, and YouTube
Okay.
lets you.
Okay,
lets
so
you
then
post
figure
all
it
them.
out. So why you asking?
Because it's still, it feels like if you're claiming to be this one, you can't do the other ones.
Do
at the
you
same
even
time.
care if you're claiming to be one, or do you want the one that's going to work?
I just want it to do well.
Right. So then use the data.
But are you stopping anything from compounding over time if you're not sticking to
I
one thing?
personally do. We had an old saying, testing does not a good ad make. Okay? Like if you would have tested any of the old viral ads and sent it to focus group, none of the brands would have done them and none of those ads would have gone viral. But then once you have a viral ad, everybody's like, "Ooh, I want one of those. Can you make me one of those?" Like, no, dude. Those are like weird happy accidents that magically came to life. No, I can't make you that. I can try to find something that would be your version of that. How likely is that? Not very likely. So, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, we can use what tests well on YouTube and test all the thumbnails and that. But you mentioned something that I think is important, the compounding. Like maybe the wrong thumbnail with a so-so intro with the this, that, and the that, this all lined up would be ape shit. Would just go gangbusters, right? But we wouldn't have known because we weren't willing to do it because we went with the testing, right?
Well, it seems like put your best foot forward. Use the data you have.
Okay. I'm just saying I don't always trust the data. I trust my gut.
That's a big thing to say.
Yeah. And so
Should everyone. And this is actually, I think we can end on this. For the person listening right now, they are probably not in the marketing space. They're probably interested in marketing, interested in advertising. Should they trust their intuition? Or is this something that you possess because you're a creative?
I don't think it has to do with being a creative or not being one. I think for me, it's years spent doing it. We always say it's about executional experience. Like I have a lot of experience executing. So I know what I've seen good stuff. I've made good stuff. I've made horrible stuff. I've written garbage. But once you just get through it, you ever you see this clip about Seinfeld where he talks about writer's block?
I've seen a lot of people talk about it. I don't think I ever saw the original.
So, he just talks about like writer's block. Writing is hard. You just write. And sometimes it comes and sometimes it doesn't, but you just push through. So, would I tell someone who has no experience in marketing or branding, would I tell him to trust his gut? No. His gut probably has no idea what to do right now. I would tell that guy, yeah, maybe test your stuff, use a little data. Now, if you can do a combo, get someone in that you trust their taste and creativity, plus a little testing and see what that does, that would probably be a safe bet. But I suggest, any one businessman that's trying to do everything is going to fail. I'm a big believer of hiring talented people and getting out of the way. It's worth the money, and it's these businessmen's time is valuable, right? Businessmen, businesswomen, these business people's time is valuable. So hire someone that you admire and let them show you what they got, and that's what I suggest. I know at the beginning it's not always as easy. You got to get a start. So get a start, get opinions, do the testing, and hopefully that will build enough momentum for you to have someone at the wheel that you really trust.
And really, last question this time. What are some good timing expectations for us to set, for a small business owner to set for building a brand?
It really depends on what's been built and what's not. If you're starting from scratch and you need to do like an identity package and a website and social and things like that, and give yourself a runway,
So what kind of runway are we talking?
Oh man, it's so subjective. Some guys don't want to wait. I mean, we've all dealt with, business people who are ready to go, and done is better than perfect, as they like to say. And old Carlos would not agree with that. New Carlos does. Yeah, maybe we spend too much time on the nuance and in the weeds, and sometimes we just need to get something out there. So it really depends on the industry and that person's capability to like restrain themselves to go to market. Now, I think the more time you spend knowing who you are, what your brand is, what it stands for, it will inform all of the rest of the pieces. So if you really know who you are, what you're doing, and what you're saying off the bat, and you spend a lot of time focusing on that, everything else falls out. Like it'll unfold naturally based on that. So focus on kind of the who, the why, and then the what, and then the where, and the all those things will just kind of come. I think personally, there. I forget which famous artist says it. Like if you try to draw something just by looking at it, it's a lot more difficult if you like take it apart in your mind, imagine all the pieces, and then almost draw those together rather than this whole thing that you're not. And what do I mean by that? What's the metaphor? The metaphor is like, know what you're working with before you start any pad to paper. Know what your like the goal is and where you're really headed, and then comes the path, and then it may move very quickly. And typically the things that take long are the doubts, and that's what slows things up. Because when you see it and it's right, it takes a second. Yes, no. When the options are there, and it's the indecisiveness that deadlocks everything. Well, here are all the logos. Here's all the typefaces. Here's the colors. This is the website look. This is the headlines. If you knew what you wanted to say and you knew who you were, it'd be like that line, that color, that website, that button, that piece of content. We're good. Let's go. But when you don't know anything, you're like, anybody else want to help me decide? Because I don't know. And I think that's the real that's the real molasses in marketing, doubt.
Yeah, that's a huge takeaway for me, at least, that a brand is not the core of it, at least, is not the typeface. It's not the color. It's your actual reason for being there. It's your why. And to start with the packaging of your brand and not think about the brand itself is working backwards and may not get you anywhere anytime soon. Thank you so much for coming today, for
Man,
sharing your wisdom.
Absolutely.
I learned so much. Hopefully, within a couple months, we have a pretty cool start to a brand. So
Amazing.
thank you.
Yeah, dude. Thanks for having me.